Time right now is 7:13. Israel and Hezbollah agreed to renew their ceasefire.
This after peace talks between the U.S. and Iran were postponed because of Israel's strikes on Lebanon. And joining us right now here in studio is Professor and Fox 5 political analyst Ric Epps with his thoughts on the negotiations. Thanks for coming in.
Good to see both of you.
What do you make of the ceasefire announcement moments ago between Israel and Hezbollah?
Well, we'll see. We'll have to see where the dust settles. These agreements tend to be very ambiguous, and it's a great moment for the moment. Historically, those, especially when you look at Hezbollah and Israel, those don't last very long. I'll be surprised if it lasts. If it lasts a week, I'll be surprised, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Just because historically, when you look at the evidence, it never has. So. Again, ironically, the first paragraph in the MOU for the agreement was that cessation of all military action, including Lebanon. And Israel continued to bomb in Lebanon. So the agreement's already on somewhat shaky ground, if you want to call it an agreement. So we'll have to see. We'll see what happens with this. I'm not optimistic.
The talks between Iran and the U.S., when are they going to get rescheduled, and what's the latest there?
We don't have a date yet.
Yeah.
Everybody's in this sort of holding pattern, and I think initially it started because of the bombing, and I think there's still some questions within the agreement of whether Iran is going to adhere or be able to control the proxies, whether it be Hezbollah or other external proxies that are in the region, to allow them to hold up the agreement. Because the foundation of that agreement is the cessation of military action. And if your proxies are still shooting, then there's no way and Iran doesn't completely control those entities. And I think people forget about that, even though they have somewhat control. They don't completely control Hezbollah.
You mentioned some military action. Can we review very briefly what are some of the key points of this peace agreement between the U.S. and Iran?
Yeah. Well, primarily the first one, the most important to most people in the world, is obviously opening the Straits of Hormuz, right? That's the big one, because that allows for 20% of the world economy to flow again. And not just the oil, there are other resources that also come through that strait. And yet, so that's the first part. The second would be the sanctions, the lifting of sanctions. This is where people are kind of concerned about, have we gone too far in terms of what we have offered to secure this agreement? $300 billion of aid to Iran to help rebuild their infrastructure. How do we monitor that? How do we make sure that that money is going to do what it's supposed to do, as opposed to go to other projects, military projects, or other nuclear, working the nuclear reactors, or enhancing their nuclear capabilities? We don't know. So unless we're going to have ability to have a system of verification, then that becomes also a concern as well. I say those are the two main ones I would say that stand out. Those two, there are 14 points to all of this, right? Of course, the military action's part of it. There's a lot that goes into this agreement, but I would say those are the primary things, keeping the straits open and keeping the economy of the world going forward. I have a greater concern in that, which I'll talk about probably later, the human element. I think that's what always gets left out of these discussions, is what happens to the Iranian people. And I hope we get a chance to discuss that in the midst of this conversation.
And several Republican senators weren't happy with this $300 billion. I believe Ted Cruz said the president, he thinks, is getting some bad advice. Where is that advice coming from, first of all? And what are your thoughts on the Republican senators saying this is not a thing we want?
Well, so it's interesting because, again, the giving of aid, this is where foreign policy gets complicated, because, as we all know, it really comes down to money. Money and resources are really the key to drive most of the foreign policy edicts that happen in the world. And so in terms of providing the aid to Iran to rebuild, is an olive branch for them. Now, whether his foreign policy, officials, along with the people in the money side of our country, decided to say, hey, look, this is where your deal needs to be in order to be able to get this agreement. I don't like the word agreement, but we'll call it an agreement for now, to get it pushed forward. then that's what we'll do. Now, whether we'll do it in incremental steps, right? So in other words, you say, okay, here's 10 billion, now let's see what you do with that, and then here's another 10 billion. Ironically, this is the same criticisms that went into Barack Obama's previous plan about giving money back to Iran, are the same things that we're seeing that are part of this plan. But this plan even goes further to give more teeth to the Iranian regime, and looks like we're the ones that balked and not them. And certainly the U.S. had a lot of pressure, not just internally, but also from our allies. Everybody's economies are on shaky ground, and this becomes the major talking point for us to deal with is how do we get the global economy running again? And this is where that acquiescence to the 300 billion came from.
I imagine that kind of feeds into what you just alluded to about your concern with the Iranian people. Can you elaborate just a little bit more on that, the concern that you have about the end of the war and the peace agreement?
So on the human side of things, I would say this is the part that we as humans sometimes forget. It's easy to get wrapped up in war, and yes, we look at our military and look at what we do, but there's a consequence for all those actions. And in every war, it's the people, the everyday people who suffer, right? No matter what the war is, the everyday people suffer. Governments make decisions, and the people suffer for them. What concerns me about this is that we made a lot of promises to the Iranian people who were clamoring for regime change. Regime change is not uncomplicated. It's very complicated. But they had a lot of hope. The monarchist movement was very loud. I have many close friends, Iranian friends around the world. In fact, I was visiting one not too long ago. And it's interesting when you talk to them, they just want to go home. They talk about their country and just how beautiful it was and how just amazing stories that you hear. And you see tears in their eyes because they're like, and they had such hope because when Trump said to them, the Armada's coming, we're coming. And then they're like, yeah, thank God, this is gonna be the catalyst for change. And then they just bargained it away. And then what it does is now you're gonna fortify a regime with a younger, stronger, more dynamic leader. You're gonna embolden the IRGC, which is really who runs the country, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. They run the country. Now they're more emboldened. So are more people going to die inside of Iran because of it? What happens to the dissidents? What happens to the everyday citizens who stood up hoping for change now that we've now bargained away their lives again? We have just bargained away and given away their lives. And it breaks my heart because I listen to my friends cry because of what's happened. And they said, but you guys promised us. Yeah. You promised us you were coming. And you didn't, and while the bombs flew and you went yay for a moment, that was not the way you were going to be able to change what happened internally. So I think we have to remind ourselves of the human toll. I think we have to have reverence for it. I think it's an important part of that dynamic that no matter what happens with this agreement, the consequence of what happens inside to those people.
Ric Epps, we appreciate, as always, your analysis and your insight.